Joshua's going to come up and introduce Abby, but we have a few more minutes, so just, you can talk to each other and things. I'll let you know the plan after Abby speaks is we have some tables in the back that you probably noticed in the narthex. And those are some of the different people that we have that are helping to minister to these young women that are having babies. And so there's different groups back there. And we'd like it if you'd stop by those tables. We even have one table where you can sign up to join our Catholic Respect Life Ministry. We meet on the second Tuesday night of every month. Our rosary starts at 6:45, and the meeting starts at 7. We usually are in the, what room is it? St. John the 23rd. That's it. Pope St. John the 23rd room. That's the room that we're usually in. So we'd love for you to come to our meetings. We're finished by 8:30 or 9, and there's always something interesting to talk about. And then there's other things back there that after you've listened to Abby, you may feel inclined to do something more than come to listen to her tonight. You may feel that you can do more, and so there's different tables back there for that. So we encourage you to go to those tables. Abby will have a table back there, and you can get some more of her information there. She has a wonderful ministry, and thank God he works in wonderful ways, and he did with Abby. So I'll just let Joshua start whenever he thinks it's time to get going.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joshua Bidding, and I serve as the Director of Evangelization here at Good Shepherd Catholic Community. And I work with the Respect Life Ministry as their staff liaison. And so it's my privilege to be up here tonight to introduce Abby. I wanted to just open my comments with saying that it may seem possibly strange to you that the Director of Evangelization is introducing a pro-life speaker. But what I hope you come away with tonight is that the church's efforts to end abortion, to end these attacks on the sacred dignity of human life, flow out from the very heart of the gospel message. Pope St. John Paul II, in his beautiful document, The Gospel of Life, talks about the dignity of every single human life. And in a particular way, he talks about the vulnerable child in the womb. St. Teresa of Calcutta spoke powerfully against this scourge a number of times. And in her reflections, one of the things that she constantly brings back to is, if we don't take care of those who are most vulnerable in our society, that is, children in their mother's womb, then the respect for the dignity of every human life, every other human life, will be affected negatively. And so we live in a world where I think we are seeing some of the consequences of that. But I just want to remind us all that Christ came to give us life, and to give us life to the full. That's the gospel message. God hates death. God hates the anti-culture of death that abortion represents. And so as Catholics, as Christians, as disciples of Jesus Christ, every single one of us has an obligation to protect the sacred dignity of every human life, but in a particular way, those who are unborn and don't have a voice, can't speak for themselves. So the Church's evangelizing mission, at the very heart of it, is the dignity of the human person, and that God became a man, God became a little baby in his mother's womb. He became that vulnerable child, and he showed us the true dignity of our human life. And so It's great to have Abby with us tonight to be able to share a little bit about her own story and how God brought conversion in her life. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Abby's biography, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but Abby worked for Planned Parenthood for 8 years. She worked her way up through the ranks, eventually to become clinic director. It was while witnessing ultrasound-guided abortion of a 13-week-old baby that the reality of abortion really hit home. And since then, she has worked tirelessly to share the gospel of life and to share the dignity of every child, of every human life. She has started an organization, and Then There Were None, which is a ministry that reaches out to others like her who are attempting to leave the abortion industry and to transition out of that. And so after the talk tonight, you'll hear a little bit more information about how you can support their mission. But this would be one powerful way that you can help bring about the culture of life, especially in this Respect Life Month. We bring particular attention to the church's teaching on the dignity of every single human life. And we pray that through Our Lady's intercession and through the hard work of so many people, that this scourge would come to an end very soon. And so I just encourage you all, especially in the remainder of this month of October, to really, in a particular way, join in prayer for the end to abortion. And really delighted to be able to invite Abby up to share with us tonight. And I know that you'll walk away different tonight than when you came in here. And hopefully we'll be encouraged to do whatever you can on your part, now that you've heard this message, to become evangelizers of the gospel of life. So without further ado, I welcome my back.
Well, I'm an Aggie, so howdy. You're supposed to say that. That sounds good. Okay. So it's really good to be here with all of you guys tonight. And I live in Austin, Texas now, with my husband and our 7 children. We have an 11-year-old daughter named Grace, and then we have 4 boys. They are 6, 5, 4, and 3. And then we have 1-year-old baby girl twins. And then I'm pregnant again. So number 8 is on the way. So we do know how it happens. So nobody needs to ask. I teach natural family planning. I have no clients. Nobody trusts me with their fertility. So I'm going to talk a little bit, but honestly, it's rare that I have an opportunity where we can sort of be in conversation with one another, and so I'm going to talk for a few minutes, but I would actually like to hear from a lot of you and answer any questions that you may have. There may not be a whole lot of times in your life where you can ask the question of someone who used to run an abortion facility, and so I want to give you that opportunity tonight. I like Q&A, that's like my favorite thing, so when I have the opportunity to do it, I like to do it. So, but yeah, a little bit about me. I worked at Planned Parenthood for 8 years. I'm sort of assuming that most of you know my story a little bit. I worked at Planned Parenthood for 8 years. I was a clinic director at one of their abortion facilities out of the Houston affiliate. I got involved with Planned Parenthood as a kid. In college, I grew up in a pro-life home. I've got fantastic parents. I remember in high school saying that I was pro-life, but if you would have put me in a debate against someone who was pro-choice, I would have lost. Abortion was not something that we talked about in my home. It wasn't really something that we sat around the dinner table and discussed. There was not an abortion, I grew up in South Louisiana, there was not an abortion facility anywhere around where we lived. I didn't know what a pregnancy center was. My parents were not pro-life activists in any way, shape, or form. Being pro-life was something that we said, but it wasn't really how we lived in our family. And so I went to A&M, I met a woman on campus who was trying to recruit volunteers to work, so free college student labor, right? And she was trying to recruit people for the organization and maybe even patients as well. And she asked me what I knew about Planned Parenthood, and honestly, I knew nothing about them. I don't even know up until that moment if I had ever heard the name Planned Parenthood before. And so she started, so that's like, I'm like the best kind of client, right? I'm the best kind of person for her to talk to because she can start giving me their talking points, right? So she starts talking to me and she starts telling me that without access to Planned Parenthood, low-income women would have nowhere else to go for basic health care needs. And I'm going to be honest with you, I do not know the plight of a low-income woman who is uninsured, underinsured. I've always been very fortunate to have health care available to me whenever I needed it. So when she told me this, I didn't have any reason to believe that she was not being honest. And that sounded good, right? Because who doesn't want to help low-income women? All people want to help other people get access to health care, and that sounded great. It sounded like they were this medical benefactor to the masses. And she asked me what I had thought about abortion. I told her that I was raised pro-life. And she said, that's great. She said, pro-life people, they're good people. They're just sort of misguided. She said they don't see the big picture. They don't understand the big picture. They don't understand that without access to safe and legal abortion, women are going to be forced to go where? Back alleys, right? And that's going to be really bad, and women are just going to be, just dying all over the streets, just bleeding to death everywhere, just women dying everywhere. And these pro-lifers that just want to take away our rights to our bodies to do with them what we will, and then they're going to start taking away our other rights. They're going to tell us, that women no longer have a right to vote, and they're going to start going after each one of our rights. And I thought, that sounds terrible, So I signed up immediately to get involved with this organization that was helping so many, that was protecting the rights of women. And I tell people, it's what I didn't know about the organization. That's what actually led me in their doors. So when she told me that without Planned Parenthood, women would have nowhere else to go for health care, see, I didn't know that was a lie. In the United States, there are fewer than 700 Planned Parenthood facilities nationwide. There are more than 13,000 federally qualified health centers that provide comprehensive care to low-income women at low or no cost. And not just to women, they actually provide comprehensive care to women, men, and children. Those 13,000, that doesn't include rural public health centers, hospital health systems, county health departments. It doesn't include the more than tens of thousands of private and group practice physicians that accept government subsidy programs like Medicaid. So we're talking about tens of thousands of providers compared to fewer than 700. But Planned Parenthood is the only place women can go. You see, it's a lie, but that's what happens with a lie. When someone speaks a lie enough times, people will begin to believe it is true. And then the most interesting thing happens. Then the person speaking the lie they will begin to believe that it is actually true. When she was talking to me about all these back alley abortions, see, I didn't know that what took place before 1973, pre-Roe v. Wade, see, I didn't realize that what took place back then is actually no different than what takes place today inside of legal abortion clinics. Women are still dying from abortion procedures. Women are still being physically and emotionally maimed by this procedure. They're still getting infections from dirty instruments. They still have unlicensed and untrained staff performing invasive medical procedures on them. And in the end, abortion can never actually be safe, because in order for an abortion to be deemed successful, a unique and individual human being must be killed. And that in itself is the antithesis of what it is to be safe. See, that's all stuff I didn't know. And I believe with every part of my being that it is what the majority of women in our society do not know that leads them in the doors of the abortion clinic. Women don't have abortions because they want to kill their child. Women have abortions because they feel like they've run out of choices. The whole idea of being pro-choice is really a myth. Because there's at no point in time where a woman walks into an abortion clinic and says, I am so excited to exercise my right to choose today. Women have abortions because they feel like they're out of options. And once a woman walks into an abortion clinic, her choices are now removed. There are no more choices for her. See, all of that I didn't know. And people ask me all the time, Abby, how is it that you went from being this, good Christian kid? I was a pretty good kid. I didn't do very many things wrong that my parents found out about. How is it that you went from being that person to being a person who ran an abortion clinic? How did you go from being that person to being a person who laid on an abortion clinic table not once but twice to take the lives of my own children by abortion? How did that happen? And I guess I don't really have just a silver bullet answer for you tonight, except to say that it happened just a little bit at a time. Because that's the way that sin works in all of our lives. It's just one little lie at a time, one little compromise at a time, one little justification. And I know that the road to immorality is at a slow decline. But I know that when God wants to change your life, it can happen in literally an instant. And that's what happened to me in the fall of 2009. 2009 had been an interesting year for me, and in the spring of that year, I was awarded Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year award. You know your applause, and you're all very proud of me. But I was pretty excited. I remember feeling like I'm sort of at the peak of where I will be with Planned Parenthood. This is what an amazing accomplishment I have achieved here. Things started to change a little bit throughout the year. In August of that year, I was given a directive to double the abortion quota, a certain number of abortions that we had to sell to women at our facility. And I remember sitting in that meeting feeling confused because I had now worked at Planned Parenthood for 8 years, and I had said to everyone that would listen that our goal at Planned Parenthood was to keep abortion safe, legal, and rare. So if that were true, then why were we doubling our abortion quota? Why did we have an abortion quota in the first place? So I said this out loud to my supervisor, thinking that this was certainly an error. And And she looked at me and she started laughing and she said, Abby, why would we want to reduce the abortion number? That's how we make our money. And I'm not really sure how I walked away from that conversation. I'm not really sure how I justified that conversation in my mind, but I remember wondering at the time, is it that the organization is changing, or is it that now I am so high up in management, I'm actually seeing what we've been about all along? And I realize now it was the latter. Nothing had changed. I just was now seeing the organization with new eyes. About a month later, we had a visiting physician come in from out of town. And he was explaining to me that he performed abortions differently in his own private practice than we did at Planned Parenthood. And I'm not going to go into, usually I would, but I'm not going to go into how our protocol happened. I'm not going to go through that because there's kids here. But I will say that our protocol for the abortion, we performed an ultrasound on women who were coming in to have an abortion. But we really only did that for one reason, and that was to determine how far along the woman was in her pregnancy so that we would know how much to charge her for the abortion. And then the ultrasound was rolled away. There was never an opportunity for a woman to view her ultrasound. That was never offered to her from the staff. There was never a time for her to listen to the heartbeat of her baby, to ask questions about what she was seeing on the ultrasound. We didn't want the women to see the ultrasound monitor because, you see, the ultrasound exposes the lie of the abortion industry. It shows these women that inside their womb, there is a living human being with a beating heart. And that's bad for business when your business is abortion. And so we didn't give these women an opportunity to see the ultrasound. We didn't even tell them we were performing an ultrasound. And when it was done, we would roll the ultrasound machine away, and the doctor would come in and he would begin the abortion procedure. But he didn't use an ultrasound during any other part of the procedure, so he was blindly going into the woman's uterus, poking this instrument around until he thought he had all the tissue in a glass jar. This doctor was explaining to me that, it's actually safer for the patient if the doctor can see what he's doing during the abortion and he uses the ultrasound during the entire procedure. And that made a lot of sense to me because I couldn't think of any other surgical procedure in which the doctor did not have a visual of the part of the body where he was operating. Even still to this day, 9 years later, I cannot think of any surgical procedure that's done in this sort of blind manner. Yet abortion is the #1 surgical procedure in the United States. So I went to my supervisor and I said, if this is the safest type of abortion for women, why isn't this our standard of care inside of Planned Parenthood? She told me that yes, it was safest for women to use the ultrasound. But she said using an ultrasound during the abortion takes an extra 3 minutes of time per patient. And our goal at the clinic was to have a woman on the table, off the table, abortion complete in 5 minutes. And we were trying to do anywhere between 30 to 50, 60 abortions a day. So when you're trying to do that many procedures, adding up 3 minutes of time per patient is just too much time. So I accepted that answer, but this doctor told me that if time presented and the right patient presented, he would show me what this type of abortion procedure looked like. He said he thought it would be a good learning opportunity for me. That time did come. I was asked to assist in the abortion procedure. My job was to hold the ultrasound probe on the woman's abdomen so that the doctor would be able to, in his words, visualize his target. We did the measurement. We found that the woman was 13 weeks along in her pregnancy. Now, at 13 weeks, just for reference, everything is formed on the baby. So arms, legs, fingers, toes, fingerprints are formed. Heart's beating, brain waves are flowing. Every internal organ that we sit here with today is already formed in the fetus at 13 weeks. Outside of the womb, the baby's about this big, and we can even tell if it's a boy or a girl. Now, admittedly, I did stand there looking at this ultrasound monitor, feeling nervous about what I was about to see, feeling apprehensive, because I recognized that what I was looking at on the screen, it really looked like a baby. Now, I knew it wasn't, because I had been taught abortion science. Now, abortion science teaches us that if a pregnancy is wanted, then that pregnancy is a baby. But abortion science also says that if a pregnancy is unwanted, then that pregnancy is just tissue, trash, something to be discarded, waste. And I knew that this baby was unwanted, so it wasn't actually a baby. Now, I was pregnant with my daughter Grace in Hatmore when I worked at Planned Parenthood. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, she was a baby because she was wanted. In fact, my coworkers actually threw a baby shower for me at the clinic on a Saturday after a long day of performing abortions. And nobody thought anything about it because we had all been taught abortion science. I stood there looking at the screen, feeling nervous, reminding myself, though this was not a baby, this fetus was not going to feel any pain. The fetus doesn't have any sensory development, doesn't feel anything until 28 weeks. All of these talking points that I had been given by Planned Parenthood, I was reciting them in my head over and over again, trying to make myself feel better, trying to calm my nerves. And I looked back up at the ultrasound monitor, and I could see this cannula, this suction tube, that's what's actually hooked up to the suction machine. I could see that going into the woman's womb. I could see it on the screen in her uterus, and the suction wasn't yet turned on. And I was watching as it was getting closer and closer to the side of this baby. And once it finally touched his side, he jumped. And he began flailing his arms and legs as if he was trying to move away from the abortion instrument, but there was nowhere for him to go. And in just a few seconds, the doctor asked the technician to turn on the suction machine, and he said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And the suction was turned on, and what I saw next was hard to watch, but I knew that was going to happen. See, it wasn't the death of this child that caused my heart to change. It was the humanity of this child that caused my heart to change. Seeing that this 13-week-old baby, he really wasn't very different than me. We were different size. We were located in 2 different places. But we still had that innate human response to fight for our lives when they were under attack. That is something that is shared by all of us. And yet I had watched this baby fight for his life. And I had done nothing to stop it. I went back to my office that day. I sat down at my desk and I knew that things were going to have to change in my life. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I knew that I was going to have to leave my job at Planned Parenthood, and that scared me. Because really, I didn't know who I was outside of my work at Planned Parenthood. It had become my identity. Who I was, what I fought for. But for 8 years, almost every day, there had been people standing outside of my clinic praying. And I knew they were primarily praying for the women going in, but I knew they were also praying for us, for those of us who work there. They told me that they were. And I looked out the window and I saw these 2 women praying. And I thought, well, maybe I should pray too. So I started to pray and I was asking God, where do I go? Who do I go to? All of my friends were involved in the abortion movement in some way. And I didn't know where to turn. So I started to pray and I felt like God was telling me to go to these people, to go to these pro-life people. And I remember thinking, no, give me somebody else. Like anybody else. But I felt very strongly that I was supposed to go to them. And so I ran out the back door, I got in my car, I drove to their office. I could have walked because it was conveniently located next door. But I thought that would look suspicious, so I got in my car and I drove like the 50 yards. And I pulled in their parking lot, I walked in their back door, surprised the heck out of all of them. And I said, I want out. And I really didn't know what else to say. Because I couldn't think of any words that really made sense. You know, I couldn't really apologize. That nothing, no amount of sorry sounded okay. So I just sat there and I wept. And I began counting. I was counting the years and the days and the number of patients. And I realized that in my 8 years, I had helped to facilitate over 20,000 abortions. And I didn't know how to live with that kind of sin, how to live with that kind of burden. And honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to. But as I sat there, God reminded me that there was absolutely nothing I could ever do to make up for what I had done. There was nothing I could do to make up for my sin. But he also told me that because of his radical and divine mercy, I didn't have to make up for my sin. That it was over. I was forgiven. And it was like in that moment, I could almost feel my heart turning from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh. It was like I could feel myself becoming a new creation in him. And he just kept reminding me over and over again that it was finished, it was over, and that he had won. I decided I would go ahead and put in my resignation. Not to worry, I gave him a good 5 minutes notice. And I told the pro-life group, the Coalition for Life, that I was going to be leaving that day. And so they sent out a young man to the sidewalk named Bobby to be out there just to be sure I was able to leave without incident. Everything was fine. So I was loading up my last bit of stuff and putting it in my car. And I waved to Bobby and I told him that I would be by their office the next day. And I got in my car and I pulled out of that driveway for the last time. And I took a left. And I got to a stoplight and I looked in my rearview mirror. And Bobby didn't know I could see him. He didn't know I was watching him or anything. But I remember watching him. He put his arms in the air and he fell to his knees. Because you know, there had to be days where they looked at me and they said, she's never going to leave. God, why are you even prompting us to pray for this woman? She's mean to us. She mocks us. She mocks our faith. Guys, I was not the friendly abortion clinic director. Yet they continued to pray, probably sometimes in disbelief. Yet praying anyway, sometimes believing that that day would never come. And then one day, just like that, they did. You see, I'm standing in front of you today as a testament to the power of conversion. No one is beyond the power of conversion because no one is beyond the power of Christ. And I know sometimes people say, well, I don't know, this person, they seem too far gone. But if you really believe that someone is too far gone for God's mercy, then you must not know the same God that I do. Because the God that I serve, he's sort of in the business of miracles. He's in the business of conversion. He leaves the 99 to go after the one. I'm thankful every day that he chased after me. You can run from God, but he is always faster. Always. And that really has to be what our pro-life movement is about. It can't just be about saving the one baby. It has to be about converting the hearts. And here's why I say that. Because we know statistically that 60% of women who have abortions already have children at home. So we might work to save one baby, but what we know is that if we don't actually work to change her heart, then if she has that second unplanned pregnancy, she's actually more likely to abort that baby. It can't just be about numbers, guys. This has to be about eternal change in the lives of these families, in the lives of these mothers, and in the lives of the fathers. See, I believe one of the primary antidotes to abortion is fatherhood. But we have a society of young men, almost half now, who have been raised without fathers in their lives. And I'm just going to be so bold to say that the church, the Christian church, has failed to step into the lives of these fathers. So, who stepped in? Society. And my friends, that has been an incredibly failed experiment. Because we have so many fathers today that do not know how to be fathers. They do not know how to be husbands. They do not know how to be providers. They do not know how to be protectors. They don't know how to be the person that God created them to be, because we haven't told them. We haven't shown them. We haven't lived life with them. We haven't gone on this messy journey with them because we haven't wanted to get our hands dirty. I look around in our society, 1 in 3 women having abortions before the age of 45. Over 1 million abortions annually in the United States. Almost 4,000 abortions every single day. If you want to know how to end this tragedy, I can tell you it's going to start right here. It's going to start in the church. Because 64% of women who have abortions regularly attend church. And that can't be a surprise. That cannot be a surprise. I was raised in church my whole entire life. Even when I worked at Planned Parenthood, I went to church every Sunday. You know how many times I heard a sermon on abortion? 0 times. In my whole life. And we weren't just, sometimes going to church. We were there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, youth group, youth camp, all the things. The church doors were open, we were there. Never in my life heard a sermon regarding abortion. And that's not rare. That's actually common. What I experienced growing up, that's the norm. And I don't know why it is, because I guess it's because, I don't know, we're worried about offending people, we're worried about making people upset, and I'm just here to tell you guys, the people that are on the other side of this debate, the people that oppose the teachings of Christ, they are not in the least bit worried about offending you. In fact, they revel in your offense. I did. But we don't want to say anything because we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to make anybody upset. Guys, let me be straight with you. You actually weren't put here on this earth to win a popularity contest. You weren't placed here on this earth to see how many Facebook friends you could have, to see how many best friends you can gather. That's not why you're here. You are here for one reason. And that is to speak to the gospel of Christ. To share the gospel of Christ. Our job is to help get other people to heaven. And you won't do that if you're silent. That's it. If there was ever a time to be unabashedly pro-life, it's right now. It's right now. Because there's a whole lot on the line right now. And every part of our daily actions influences our culture of life or death. My goal, my end goal is not to make abortion illegal. Now, that has to happen in order for my end goal to be met. But my end goal is actually to make abortion unthinkable, so that a woman in crisis would never even darken the door of an abortion facility. However, we know that we can't make abortion unthinkable until abortion becomes illegal. Why? Because legality dictates the morality in a society. I can't even tell you how many times women came in to my office, sat down with me, and said, you know, I've always been pro-life, but I mean, I guess if it's legal, it must be okay. So the first thing that we must do as pro-life people, as Catholics, as Christians, is we must vote. We must vote early. We can vote right now. Well, not right now. This week, next week, you can vote. And you need to vote your conscience, and you need to vote for life. Every time, 100%. Look, we can talk about other issues. You want to talk about the economy? Let's talk about the economy. I wonder what our economy would look like right now if we hadn't have aborted over 60 million taxpayers. You want to talk about problems with immigration? You want to talk about child abuse? You want to talk about domestic violence? All of that stems from the dehumanization of the individual person. And that stems from the womb. Because when you are willing to violate the most vulnerable in our society, you will be willing to violate the rights of anyone. There's not an issue you could throw at me that I cannot tie back to the dehumanization of the unborn in the womb. So when you vote for the person who is pro-life every single time. Second, you have got to talk to your kids and to your grandkids. I'm not sure how it happened or when it happened, but somehow now parents are not the primary educators of morality in their children's lives. Somehow that has been passed off to our state, to our educational system, our flawed educational system. And parents are no longer the moral authority in their home when it comes to their children. And I don't know if it's because parents felt like they were bullied out of that position, or I'm not really sure what it was. But while we've been sitting back and letting other people educate our children, and letting other people instill their values in our children, Planned Parenthood's business plan has been going like gangbusters. And I'm going to tell you what that business plan is, and it's going to sound like a weird, like conspiracy thing, but it's not. This is just their very simple, basic business plan. Planned Parenthood's model is to get into the private and public education system starting in elementary, preferably in kindergarten. Not because they want to teach graphic sex education to your children in kindergarten. It's because they want to be a trusted person in your child's life as early as possible. And they do want to, at a younger and younger age, begin to break down their modesty, their natural modesty. So they're going to do that by talking about things way earlier than children need to hear about them. Way before you're ready to talk about them, they're going to start talking about them. And then, once your child goes through puberty, 10, 11, 12 years old, They will have already been in your child's life for 5, 6, 7 years. And they will tell your children, don't go to your parents when you start having questions. You come to me, you come to us, because you know me. And you know, I'm not going to judge you, and your parents, they're just not going to understand what you're going through right now. They're not a safe person to talk to, but I am. So your children will go to them, and they'll get them into one of their clinics, and they'll put your kids on a contraceptive method as early as 10 years old. And you won't even know, because they'll give them instructions to keep the pills in their locker so that you'll never find them, don't ever take them home. And I don't know about you, but I'm 38 years old, and I have a hard time remembering to take a pill every day at the same time within like a 6-hour window. So if you're telling an 11-year-old you've got to take a pill every day at the same time within a 2-hour window, we know that they will naturally fail at that task. We're actually setting them up to fail. And we did that intentionally in Planned Parenthood. We knew that they weren't going to be able to remember to take their pill every day. That's why we gave them the pill, because we know, and our statistics, Planned Parenthood statistics actually showed that 54% of women who have abortions were using a contraceptive method at the time they got pregnant. See, we know that contraception is actually not the solution. We know that. The problem is not that we need more access to birth control. The problem is that we need more self-control. But see, self-control doesn't make any money. That doesn't sell. Birth control does. So we're going to put these young girls on a birth control pill, which, by the way, increases their rate of cancer, heart attack, stroke, DVT, osteoporosis. We're going to start pumping that into their body when they're 10 or 11 years old, knowing that they will eventually fail to use that contraceptive method properly, and they will get pregnant. And hopefully, by the time they're 14, 15, 16 years old, they've already had their first abortion. And not to worry, I know that we have parental consent laws here in the state of Texas, but there's actually an organization called Jane's Due Process, and they make sure that your kids and your grandkids can get an abortion without you ever finding out. See, laws are only as good as their enforcement. And right now, we have a problem with enforcement of good laws. Then they're going to graduate from high school and they're going to go to college, and they're going to be all like, feeling free and like empowered women, right? And after they have their first abortion, we're going to give them another pack of birth control pills. We're going to keep them taking this high user error method pill, right? We're going to give them this pill that we know they can't take properly. It's already failed once, but they're going to keep taking it because we're going to keep giving it to them. And then hopefully, by the time they've graduated college, somewhere in their college years, they've had their second abortion. And then they'll start working and they'll be career women, and they will just be starting out in their career. And a baby doesn't fit into that plan, and so they'll get pregnant again. And hopefully by the time a woman is 30 years old, we've already sold her 3 abortions. And it all started with a relationship that was developed with your children and your grandchildren in elementary school. It's like grooming. We hear that term a lot, grooming, like sexual predators, they groom their victims. That's what Planned Parenthood is doing to your children in the school system. They're grooming them for sexual perversion at a very young age. That's it, it's so simple. And it's working. Because parents have stepped back and they're now just sideline observers to their children's education. That has to end. Sometimes people ask me, Abby, I don't know, I've got all these kids, what do I do to be pro-life? And my answer to them is, maybe your job right now is to raise little pro-life warriors. Maybe that's your job. But you can't do that if you aren't talking to your kids on a regular basis about these issues. Consistently, open and honestly, all the time. Not just a one-time conversation that happens in 3rd grade that traumatizes your child for the rest of their life. Like an open conversation, a dialogue about these issues, so that when your kids do have questions, they come to you. The third thing is that we have to get our churches involved. We must. We must be involved as a church, as a people of faith. I believe that one of the reasons that abortion is where it is today is because of the silence of the church. And if we're going to end this, it's going to have to end here with us looking this evil in the face and saying, no more. That's going to take all of us being willing to take a stand, being willing to be bold, being willing to be ostracized, being willing to be persecuted. Just going to have to take an unabashed yes to the will of God. And lastly, we have to figure out in our own lives how to turn our apathy into action. We have to figure out how to make this real in our own lives every day. This is not your pro-life activity for the year. Like, it's a good start, but this isn't actually what it is to be pro-life. This is what it is to talk the talk. But this isn't actually what it is to walk the walk. You want to do something? You want to be active in this movement? You go stand in front of one of our abortion clinics here in Dallas. You've got an abortionist here, Dr. Curtis Boyd, Southwestern Women's Services. He's aborting babies in the 5th month of pregnancy. Right here, not far from you guys. What do you know about it? Being pro-life does not mean that you're going to be comfortable. In fact, if you're doing it right, you should be uncomfortable. My mom, she's a good Southern woman, she says, if you're a Christian, you're not making somebody mad, you're not a very good Christian. And I would say that's probably accurate, because speaking the truth often offends. Doing the right thing often offends. Doing the right thing is often uncomfortable, but you know what? You have to do it anyway. There's a list of pregnancy centers and services on the back of the program that you got here. Every single one of them is run off of volunteers. They need people like you to volunteer at those centers, to give to those centers, to just spend time mentoring a young woman, repairing something that's broken at the center, dropping off a pack of diapers. You know, every time you go to Walmart, every time you go to H-E-B, every time you go to the store, you could very easily pick up a pack of diapers, some wipes, drop it off at your local pregnancy center. You wouldn't even notice it in your budget. You wouldn't even notice that money missing. Just make it a habit. Pick up something they need, drop it off. Easy. We've got to do something. We have to put feet to our words. I don't think God God is sitting up there going, you know, I would end abortion, but I haven't heard a prayer from Susan yet. And if she would just pray to end abortion, then I would do it. Guys, God hates abortion. We don't have to pray to Him to convince Him that abortion is wrong. I think oftentimes when we're praying, oh God, please end abortion, He's looking at us and saying, okay, I'm waiting on you. I'm waiting on you to be my hands and feet. You want to end abortion? Okay, let's do it. But it's going to take every single one of us feeling that conviction and getting involved. Even if you don't feel the conviction, do it anyway. Because it's the right thing to do. I'll briefly talk about, I'm not just saying it, I lived this. So when I left Planned Parenthood, I started having these, when my first book came out in 2011, I started having these people contact me that worked in abortion clinics, and they were asking me, you know, can you help me leave the abortion industry? And I thought, gosh, we've been doing this at that time, you know, almost 40 years. Certainly, there's some sort of national group out there that's helping abortion clinic workers leave their jobs, right? So I started looking around and noticed there was not one. There was nothing like that. And so I started to pray. And I was like, God, I really want you to really burden someone so that they would start this organization for abortion clinic workers. And I just kept praying that over and over again, and He just kept being like, dummy. And finally I was like, I don't want to though, but nobody else was doing it, and so I was like, okay, I guess this is me, I guess I'm gonna do it. So I started this organization, honestly, not really thinking it would be successful. I mean, like, if I'm perfectly honest, I was like, I'm gonna do it, but this is sort of a hard sell, you know, and trying to convince current abortion workers to leave their jobs and come into the pro-life movement, and I thought, okay, yeah, we'll see how that goes. So, and then I went to other pro-life people, like pro-life leaders, and I pitched this idea to them, and they all looked at me like, good luck with that, right? So I really had no confidence in this ministry when I got it started. And so when we were making our strategic plan, we thought that if we had 10 abortion clinic workers leave a year, that would be like amazing, overwhelming success, right? So now we're in year 6, and we have had 467 abortion clinic workers leave. And we've also had 7 full-time abortion doctors leave their jobs. And because of that, we have helped close down 18 abortion facilities. So, and we know there's more to come. And so, you know, I feel like, and then there were none, was just sort of the missing piece of this pro-life puzzle. You know, we have organizations and groups for like everything on the sun, but we had everything under the sun, but we had nothing to reach out to abortion workers, and now we do. And we're seeing workers have conversions of heart. I mean, really, almost every week, we're having a worker come to us and leave, and they're talking, and they're sharing their stories, and they're working with Congress, and they're working with state legislative houses, and they're getting laws changed, and they're closing down clinics, and babies are being saved. And women are not knowing the pain and harm and scars of abortion. And it's beautiful. And it's because God can take the life of any sinner and use their story for His glory. That's the heart of the gospel. That's really the heart of the gospel. And so if you feel inclined to support our work, we have brochures, ways that you can give at our back table. We need your help. It's not a cheap ministry to run. Walking alongside and living life with these men and women who are leaving, it's hard, and there's sometimes a lot of baggage that comes along with that, and we have professional therapists that we have to keep on staff. 38% of the workers that come to us have feelings of suicide after they leave. And so having that professional help available to them is expensive, but it's necessary. And we haven't lost a worker yet, thanks be to God, and thanks to the amazing therapists that He has put in our path along this journey. And so, I don't want to take away money that you're giving to other great pro-life organizations, and certainly not money that you're tithing to the church, but I do humbly ask that if you're so inclined to please consider us whenever you're giving. Okay, and so now I want to answer questions from all of you, just for a few minutes. Yes, ma'am?
Abby, is Planned Parenthood allowed to give prescription medication to minors?
Okay, so how is Planned Parenthood allowed to give prescription medication to minors? Because if they operate a Title X clinic, Title X rules require no parental consent for minors.
Okay, and then what was the name of the law that you said that allows minors to get an abortion without consent?
It's called judicial bypass. So the Supreme Court ruled several years ago that if you are going to have any sort of parental involvement regarding abortion decisions on a minor, that there must be something called a judicial bypass. So the organization in Texas that helps minors get abortions without their parents' knowledge is called Jane's Due Process. So Title X has often, it's been in the news recently and trying to take it away from Planned Parenthood. But one of the restrictions that we really want to see on Title X money is that it would be the same as Title X or any other title funding Medicaid, that you have to have parental consent tied to minor visits. So that's a change that we also want to see in the law. Yeah, we want to see it taken away from Planned Parenthood, but I don't want my minor daughter being able to go to any doctor and receive birth control or any other type of health care without me knowing about it. Yes, ma'am?
Why is it accepted? I guess I'm very naive. Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's a question we get a lot. So leaving the abortion industry is not just like leaving any other job. Number one, there's a significant amount of spiritual attack that takes place when someone leaves. We've had 3 workers whose houses have burned down. After they left the industry, we have people whose marriages often are on the brink of failure after they leave the industry. The enemy really tries to attack someone who is trying to stand for life. And so there is a spiritual warfare component. However, the more practical part of it is that when you have worked in an abortion clinic, you essentially are a pariah in the medical community. So even though the majority of medical professionals are actually pro-choice, they know what takes place inside of those clinics. They know about the Medicaid fraud. They know about unsterile instruments. They know that a lot of these people are untrained. They know they've been performing tasks that they're not actually legally allowed to perform. And so while they want abortion to be legal, they don't want it in their clinic. So they don't actually want those workers working in their healthcare facilities. It's rare when someone who has worked in the abortion industry continues to work in the medical field, because it's very, very hard for them to get hired. Also, there's sort of this fear component, because once you have worked in the abortion clinic, you're told over and over again, one of the reasons they don't leave is because they're told over and over again that if they ever leave the abortion clinic, that clinic will give them a poor reference. And that happens all the time. even if they were an outside. Well, look at me, I just won their Employee of the Year award, and when I left, Planned Parenthood was like, she was a terrible employee. I'm like, was I? Because I think I have like a plaque that says otherwise, right? So they don't, I mean, they're not honest, right? They give terrible references. It's actually very difficult for someone to get another job, both spiritually and just practically. It's very difficult. Yes, ma'am? Yeah, so sometimes they do go by a different name. So in Texas, there's a committee at every school that's usually called the School Health Advisory Committee, or a SHAC. And those meetings are open to the public, and parents need to be going to those meetings because that's where they discuss the health presentations that are being given to kids. The meetings are usually like once a quarter or something like that, but they're open to the public. They're open for anybody to attend. And so that's a place that parents need to be going and asking questions. What are we teaching about these issues? Is Planned Parenthood curriculum being used? Things like that. Because it may not always be overtly Planned Parenthood on the information they're giving out. It's called the School Health Advisory Committee. Okay. Yes, ma'am?
I have a son who will be entering kindergarten in the public school. How is Planned Parenthood targeting the male students? You talked about the girls.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. I mean, it's still breaking down their natural modesty at a young age. It's telling them that if they want to have sex, they need to use different prophylactics. It's the same. It's still just teaching them that sex can be casual, that you don't have to be committed to a partner. Planned Parenthood also has a brochure out called, you can Google it, it's called Healthy, Happy, and Hot. It was made for kids between the ages of 8 and 16. In this brochure that they give out to kids, it tells them that if you are HIV positive, that it's wrong for states to require you to have to tell a partner before you engage in sexual activity. They say that that's your business and nobody else needs to know if you're HIV positive. That's actually against the law in the state of Texas, and they condemn and frequently try to get those types of laws overturned that have a mandatory reporting requirement. So they're going after our children in many ways. And they go after men and women, girls and boys. Yes, sir?
Do they still have the comic books? They use them back?
So they do have those comic books, but now there's a new show out on Netflix. It's called Big Mouth. And it is a Planned Parenthood propaganda cartoon that's out on Netflix that's being shown in schools. It is appalling, the things that they're saying in there, and they're making it available in public schools for kids. Yes. Workers are paid well at Planned Parenthood, which is another reason why it's hard for them to leave, because they will hire people, that have a GED. They'll hire them making $18, $19, $20 an hour, which is a significant amount of money for someone who has a high school equivalency and has no other training. So that's one of the ways that they keep their workers there. They start them out at a high salary. They get them invested in this certain lifestyle so that they can't leave. They pay for their insurance. They have good benefits. It's flexible for your kids if they're sick, whatever it is. And so they make it very difficult. And anytime you start to think about leaving, they'll give you another raise to try to keep you there. Workers leaving, that's actually what Planned Parenthood fears the most. Because they know that their workers have all of this information that they don't want to get out to the public. So they do everything they can to try to silence the people that leave. Planned Parenthood took me to court, for those of you who don't know, after I left. They took me to court trying to get a permanent gag order against me so that I wouldn't be able to do this, so I wouldn't be able to share what I know. They obviously lost. But yeah, they will do anything, including taking someone to court to try to keep them silenced. So, yes, ma'am. Yeah, so the HPV vaccine is given out by Merck, and Planned Parenthood is heavily invested in the HPV vaccine. They receive grants from Merck to make sure they're giving out the HPV vaccine to everyone who comes into their facility that's between the age range. So yeah, they are very invested financially in giving out the HPV vaccine to their patients. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if a birth defect is shown on a sonogram, are doctors required by law to give abortion as an option, or if not, why?
So that's a great question. So they are not actually, they're not required by law to offer an abortion. Most of them do because of something called a wrongful birth lawsuit. So there is an act of law called a wrongful birth lawsuit. And so we've all heard of wrongful death, right? Okay, so this is wrongful birth. It's actually just recently been banned in the state of Texas, so wrongful birth lawsuits are now no longer legal in the state of Texas. Florida really is a hotbed for them right now. So what happens if a woman is, she may have a baby with Downs or have a baby with CP or something that they find in the womb, right? And so often the first response of medical professionals is to offer an abortion because there's a fear in the medical community that if they don't offer that as an option, that they will then be sued later on if the woman does have her baby. So there have been a few cases in Florida where, one in particular, there was a couple that took the hospital and the physician to court because they ended up having a son who had Down syndrome, and they were not given the option to abort him. And so here's their son now. He's I think 8 or something like that. He's sitting in the courtroom, and they're all sitting in there saying, well, if we would have known that he was how he is, we would have aborted him. And the parents ended up being awarded $30 million because of it. So that's why they're always so quick to jump to. It's not because the doctors are abortion. I think it's just because they're fearful that if they don't give that option, even if they're against abortion, I think they're fearful that even if they don't give that option, that they will one day be forced to hand over $30 million to a family. So, yes, sir.
Just to confirm your comment about healthy, happy, and hot, I pulled it up. It says, healthy, happy, and hot, a young fertile people's guide to their rights, sexuality, and living with HIV that celebrates their sexual life.
Yep. And anybody can look it up. It's easy to Google. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so that's, there were 5 affiliates.
Please repeat the question.
Okay, sorry. She was asking if I ever had any participation in the selling of body parts from aborted babies. So there were 5 Planned Parenthood affiliates that participated in fetal tissue research, and our affiliate was one of them. So we were a center that actually participated in that program. It was not something that was secret at Planned Parenthood. In fact, we had a whole webpage about it that talked about just how altruistic it was, that we were turning these, situations, these crisis situations into this public good. Look, we're trying to cure Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and all this thanks to the women who have abortions so that we can do this. So we participated in that. I sort of averaged conservatively at our clinic in Houston. We probably made about, and this is really a conservative number, probably about $2.4 million a year off of the sale of fetal body parts. And that when those videos came out, there was a lot that was said about like, oh, this is illegal. It actually wasn't illegal. And the term of art in the law is valuable consideration. So as long as the abortion clinic can justify how the money is being used that they're receiving, it's actually legal to have a money exchange. Now, last session, we actually did pass a law here in the state of Texas that bans any sort of financial distribution for fetal tissue research in the state of Texas. But fetal tissue research, this is not new. This has been going, the first law actually regarding fetal tissue research from abortions was in Ohio, I think in 1974. So this has been going on for many, many years. This is not new. Planned Parenthood has been an active participant, and even more than Planned Parenthood actually, state universities. It's like shocking to find out how many state universities are participating in research and being funded for it. So even like Texas Christian, Texas Tech, like a ton of schools are participating in this all around the country. So, yes. Does Planned Parenthood work with Girl Scouts? Yes. Planned Parenthood has a very long-standing relationship with the Girl Scouts. Now, sometimes people will say, well, not our troop's in the Catholic Church. Well, if your troop sells cookies, if they have badges, if they pay for uniforms, if they pay national dues, which every single Girl Scout chapter must, that is a requirement that they do all four of those things, they are contributing to Girl Scouts USA, and they have direct partnerships with Planned Parenthood. In fact, that Healthy Happy Hot brochure was actually distributed by the Girl Scouts for Planned Parenthood. That was the first place that it was distributed. So this idea that you can somehow be involved with Girl Scouts and not support Planned Parenthood, that's a myth. And every single Catholic church, Catholic diocese, every single bishop should be making a very clear written statement that any Catholic church should in no way be involved with Girl Scouts. It is a disgusting organization, and some of the stuff that they put out to our young people, calling Cecile Richards a hero for women, Margaret Sanger a hero for women, it's terrible. And there are alternatives, that's the thing. American Heritage Girls is a scouting organization, Christian scouting organization. They have Catholic troops. Little Flowers is a good alternative. There's like a million alternatives. Girl Scouts is not the only game out there. There's a lot of organizations out there specifically for girls and for scouting. So, okay, yes, sir.
You mentioned a commercial benefit to Planned Parenthood by having quotas to get a certain number of abortions, and you touched on the Down syndrome case. Doesn't that bring up the subject of eugenics? And based on your experience, is that part of the driver for Planned Parenthood?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at the numbers, and we don't have exact numbers here because abortion reporting is pretty bad in the U.S. But we know that it's anywhere between 67 and 90% of babies with Down syndrome are aborted upon diagnosis. So, you would think that anything that's done for a medical reason like that would be done in the hospital, but it's not. Those are primarily being carried out at Planned Parenthood clinics. There are, there's a lot of cases where babies are aborted because of their gender. Planned Parenthood does not come out against that. They will abort babies for any reason. So, which is interesting because you would think that as this pro-woman organization, they would be out there saying aborting baby girls is wrong just because you're aborting them by their gender, but they're not. So it's just all big hypocrisy in the organization. And now I will say in Texas legislature, we did pass a Down syndrome, a bill specifically regarding abortion. on Down syndrome. We now have money and resources available that we didn't have before that gives women more information on raising a child with Down syndrome, support groups that are available. So we have, passed some legislation to make strides in that area to make sure that women know that they're supported and that Down syndrome does not have to equal a death sentence for their baby, that there are a lot of other resources and options available for them. Last question, sir.
Is Planned Parenthood required to report the numbers of abortions to the federal government? And if so, how accurate are those numbers?
So it's actually a state-by-state case. So in Texas, yes, they are required to report numbers. In California, they are not. So that's why reporting, we never really know the exact numbers. It's also why the numbers that are reported to Guttmacher, Planned Parenthood's research arm, are always different than the numbers reported to the federal government. Those should be the same. The numbers that are reported to both entities should be the same, but they're always very, very different. So there are New York is not required. So there's 5 states in the US that make up more than 50% of abortions. And that's Florida, Illinois, New York, California, and Texas. Florida, Illinois, and Texas are required to report, but New York and California, the 2 states with the highest abortion numbers, are actually not required to report. So, but it's state by state. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be back at the table. If you have questions, I have books for sale back there. What? Is it ready? Oh, okay. I have a movie coming out March 22nd. It's gonna be released in theaters. So it's being released by the guys that did God's Not Dead 1 and 2. So everywhere that was showing, my movie will also be showing. It's called Unplanned. So I have 2 scenes from the movie if y'all want to see it. So I think okay, so this one, let me just sort of explain. This one is after I had left the clinic, this is me going back to the clinic for the first time on the sidewalk, to sidewalk counsel.
Hi, my name is Abby Johnson. I used to be the director of this clinic.